Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Delivering results, exceeding expectations, being a team player, but you're still not moving up? Like you're playing the game, but somehow missing the playbook. That playbook, it's built on unspoken rules, social norms that aren't in any handbook, but hold major sway over who gets promoted, who's seen as leadership material, and who stays stuck. Welcome to Social Norm Decoding, the unspoken rules of executive success. And I'm Wendy Taylor, and this session is part of my mission to help brilliant, high-performing professionals, especially those who are neurodivergent or think differently, translate their excellence into influence, power, and upward mobility. And I've been a tech startup exec, and here I am in a t-shirt talking to you about unspoken rules. Here's what we're covering today: what social norms actually are and how they operate in executive environments. Why neurodivergent and high IQ professionals often run into let's try that again. They often run into invisible walls and how to spot them. And then there's tactical strategies to decode, navigate, and even reshape these unspoken rules without compromising who you are. We'll wrap with a little bit more information, and then if it resonates with you, I'll share how to go deeper through a clarity call. Let's dive in. Social norms are the invisible agreements about what's acceptable, impressive, or respected in a given context. In corporate spaces, norms shape everything from how you show up in meetings to when you speak up to how much eye contact you make. The right tone of voice when disagreeing with leadership, knowing when to be brief versus when to elaborate. That's a hard one for so many. How status is signaled without saying anything outright. These norms aren't about being fake. They're about being fluent in the dynamics of influence. So think about it like a language you're acquiring, and your goal is fluency. Drop a comment, or if you prefer, send me a DM and let me know. Can you recall a time when an unwritten rule affected your success, positively or negatively? What happened? Let's think about that for a minute. Many neurodivergent or gifted professionals come with deep insights, strong logic, and high output, but they can still get labeled as not a culture fit, or too intense, or not leadership material, or in my case, lacks political skills. Why? Now, why are neurodivergent and gifted professionals labeled this way? Because they're not violating rules, they're missing invisible cues others were socialized into. This often leads to being misunderstood, underpromoted, or tasked as a doer instead of a decision maker. But this isn't a flaw, it's a gap in playbook access. What's something you've been told in feedback that felt unclear or unfair? Something like tone it down, be more strategic, or just not executive. Drop that in the comments or send it to me in the DMs if you'd rather not share it in the comments. So let's actually talk about some strategies to decode and navigate those unspoken rules. First, there's pattern spotting. Start by observing what gets rewarded in your environment. Who gets airtime? Who gets invited to key meetings? What do they do differently? Then there's cue calibration. Track the tone, timing, and hierarchy cues in meetings. Are ideas presented directly or through framing questions? Are comments concise or story-driven? Those cues are gold. Do keep in mind they're also role-related. I have a story about that. I'll tell you in a minute. Then there's style shifting. You're not changing who you are. You're adapting how you present your strengths so others can receive them. So actually, I'm going to stop and tell 2 stories now. On the Q calibration, I remember watching my mentor and boss in our company's leadership meetings. At this point, we had 400 plus people in the company, about 500. About 400 of them reported into me. And there were 2 tiers of leadership. I was at the top end of the lower tier. And my mentor and boss was really brought in to kind of be the chief grown up. It was the beginning of that becoming a thing where a board would be like, okay, we've got these founders and we just need someone to kind of be the grown up in the room. And in part because of her stature and her positioning with the board and her tremendous body of experience, and in part because of her role and the fact that she had me in the room to represent operations. What would happen is there would be the people who came up with the ideas, and then there'd be the people who had to really, or their teams were going to be impacted by the ideas or had to do or deliver the ideas. That was always me, and then sometimes some of my peers. And then just as the meeting was over, she would finally weigh in. It was like this voice of wisdom and clarity and calm and stature. And I kept watching that and I thought, I'm doing something wrong. And then I realized whether or not I was doing something wrong, the thing that she was doing was role-based. And my job was to participate in the meeting at an earlier time. Were there things I could have worked on to improve how I was received? Yes, obviously. It was my first VP job. But if you're in a room and you're responsible for 400 people in operations, and the idea people come up with an idea that has to go through operations, it is your job to ask questions, set expectations, and set calendaring if your team is already doing the last 3 ideas they came up with. So that's one story. Then let's talk about style shifting. That whole changing who you are piece is really, really, really important. It's huge for me personally. Don't get me wrong. I was talking to someone the other day, ironically, just about their resume. And because they're in a field that includes a huge component of creativity, they really believed that the resume was a creative expression point for them. And that if I told them how it would be received and how it needed to be structured and what it needed to look like, I was asking them to change who they are. And they had to shift to, no, I am not my resume. My resume's job is to communicate certain things about my body of work. Well, when you think about style shifting, we're not asking you to change who you are. In fact, frequently we need you to lean more into who you are. I didn't acknowledge being gifted for decades. And the second I flipped that switch, amazing things happened for me. So I'm never going to say, change who you are. I am going to suggest adapting how you present your strengths so others can receive them. If that is kind of starting to percolate for you and you're not quite sure how you feel about that, we probably need to talk. Okay, let's move into our 4th. Mentorship and mirror feedback. Use trusted peers or mentors to replay situations. How might this have landed? What signal might I have missed? That is super, super, super valuable, especially if you have people around you with different neurodivergences and different gifted capacities. Then they can sometimes see things you can't see, and that is super valuable. The 5th is to reclaim your narrative. Use one-on-ones and visibility moments to frame your value in ways that align with executive optics. So the executive optics: impact, alignment, strategic foresight. How can you align and frame your value? Now, which of these strategies hits home for you? We've got pattern spotting, hue calibration, style shifting, mentorship and mirror feedback, and reclaiming your narrative. So, which hits home for you? Or what's something you do that helps you read the room or shift your approach? Let me know in the comments or in my DMs. I want to know. Now, before we wrap up today, I want to know what came up for you during this session. So let me know in the comments or go ahead and send me a DM. I'd love to know what this topic brought up for you today. And if you're ready to decode your specific ecosystem and craft a strategy that gets you seen, heard, and elevated without selling out your strengths, I'd love to talk. Book a clarity call with me. It's a one-on-one strategy session to pinpoint exactly where you're being underestimated and how to shift that without playing politics. Social norm decoding isn't about faking it. It's about learning the playbook so you can finally play to your level and win. If this session helped you, share it with someone else who needs it. And let's stay connected, because leadership isn't about doing the job. It's just not only about that. It's about owning the game.